Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining our session, Learn Anywhere, Effective Communication in Any Learning Environment. I'm going to pause here for a quick moment so you can review our forward-looking statement. It will also be available for a detailed review if you'd like to look at that under the Resources tab. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Molly Schmidt, and I'm the Product Marketing Manager for Education at Jamf. Today, I'm excited to be speaking with you with my two esteemed colleagues, Dr. David Saltmarsh, otherwise known as Salty, our Global Education Strategist, and Nate Hale, our Education Sales Engineer. You've definitely heard the story a few times over the last few months, and likely heard it very recently if you've attended any sort of webinar since March. Remote learning was launched all over the world, basically overnight. Some schools were given a few days, if they were lucky. Many schools were not given that much. This is something that most schools did not have a contingency plan for, resulting in teachers trying their very best to put together packets of work and finally dusting off their skills with Google Classroom, Seesaw, Canvas, and other tools. But even great tools like these, there still was a gap. Today, we've got a really good agenda planned for you. We want to talk to you about remote learning. We're going to start out with its subject of equity, which I know is on everyone's mind. We're going to talk to you a little bit about what we're doing in product development at Jamf. We're going to go into a little bit of strategy. And then finally, we're going to talk to you about a couple partnerships. So let's get started. Right now, I'd like to pass you to Salty.
Thank you, Molly. The subject of digital equity could have been its own presentation. In fact, it has. For organizations like COSIN or ISTE and others, they've been focused on this for decades. And I don't plan to go into a full presentation, just cover a few highlights. I'm going to attempt in the next 5 minutes just to focus on some of the areas of the present situation. The focal point of organizations, if they want to laser into this aspect just a little bit more, especially right now as it's directly impacting students today, as most students and most schools look to support a model involving some sort of learning at home, if not completely at home, certainly possibly a hybrid model. I won't go into all of the aspects on this slide that I made in another presentation. You certainly can go back at Jamf and look for the full aspect. What I want to do is look beyond providing a device. Many organizations do provide a device and then providing internet access. And what that means with an entire household possibly trying to get online at the same time. So we're going to go beyond that aspect. These are a given, and while they're challenges, they are somewhat obvious. And obvious, however, a huge decision when we consider that what we decide to choose for a device can impact the ability of being able to learn anywhere. And in a Learn Anywhere program, it shouldn't be about the device, but we're failing if the device does not support the following. We need to support all learners, especially those that need assistive technology. This native. Affordances matter. Touch, pinch, and screen readers, and alternative input devices, pens, or adaptive buttons and switches. These are all needed by a large population of users, and in many cases, they actually help the broader scope of users. We also want to support offline learning that's transformational. As we move beyond the basics of substitution and non-engaging lessons and activities, we have to think about if it's just being used for digital worksheets, then we're really missing the mark. We want to be able to have students doing things they could never have done before and not limit them to what was being done perhaps on paper in the classroom. If we look a little deeper, we should look at what teachers have, tools for teachers that allow them to help manage classroom workflows, whether it's in or out of school. And there's plenty of orgs that have been buying devices recently. However, if you think about cutting costs on the device, will they be looking at paying for professional development for teachers or to provide tools that extend what IT have to teachers? We need to stop looking at device management as an MDM tool only used by IT. IT, however, still plays a huge role when we think about learning at home. IT can help. They can help continue with the goal of personalization and move beyond that one-size-fits-all. With IT, with the tools that can help them create an ability to adjust on the fly, to be agile, with student privileges. Because as students go home, we can think just like in the classroom. As a student grows on a digital citizenship path, shouldn't their privileges move along with them? So we have to empower IT, whether it's in school or out of school, to be able to be encouraged to do so, guided with teachers' input. These are important whether we're in school or out of school. The devices are still important. We want to look at moving beyond the two, realizing that students are moving between both school and home. So all those same things consider. There's one vital aspect about devices at home, however, especially as parents move from a role that was once after school or helping with homework management to now all day or an oversight as a facilitation of the student's learning. We want to think about parents' access to students' device management, perhaps giving them the same capabilities that we would provide to teachers if teachers have been given those tools. We want to make parents feel more confident, take an active participation role as a stakeholder in the whole process, working with the teachers. Now, I certainly have some slides that go into some bullets that go into more detail about what's it like at home. We don't want to really go into great detail here on that. We know schools are looking to cut costs where they can, but when they're thinking about cutting costs, unfortunately, a lot of times it's after the fact they realize they need some things. So we need to consider these not as extras, like not considering assistive technology or the ability to provide transformational learning offline after the fact. We want to be able to have that as a topic when schools are looking at their purchasing and what their purchase expectation is. And we don't want it to be an afterthought after things go south because of the dilemmas that they have of not being able to adjust on the fly. Because if there's something about the pandemic situation we have right now, it's going to be about adjusting. And I mentioned that, people have been looking at this for a long time, and I don't want to get on a high horse. However, it is 2020. And I first shared a slide deck with these multiple layers back in 2013. And organizations around the globe have been addressing these for decades. Those jumping into it for the first time should consider reaching out to other organizations, hearing what they have to say from their experiences, because they've tried, they've failed, they've adjusted, and they're continuing to learn. And no one has the full answer. And while I'm prepared to jump in and try some more and probably fail a little, I really don't want to make the same mistake a third time. So I do believe we can look to some organizations who have been trying to accomplish this for decades. Because if we want to achieve digital equity, it means looking beyond the device, looking beyond the home internet access. Learning anywhere must include a purposeful planning for all learners' readiness, needs, and pace. Thank you. I'd like to hand it off to Nate.
Thanks, Salty. Salty discussed many of the equity concerns that would become apparent either immediately or very shortly after this shift. Technologically, we were concerned about this as well. And while we can't only focus on students who have parents who are able to work at home, we must look at every end of the spectrum educationally when implementing changes to our products. As a spouse of an educator, I lost track of how many times I heard the phrase, "This is not going to be easy, and what are we going to do?" All of this coming from someone who's a seasoned educator, so that made me feel great. But we need a way for students to communicate with teachers. This need it's undeniable right now. And while I can't speak for every family unit, here's what things look like at my household when we launched a remote learning initiative with my kids' school. The email would be sent to my teacher from me saying I have a first or third grader, in this case, that would need help with an assignment. The teacher would then respond back sometimes immediately, within a few minutes, or maybe within an hour or so. None of that communication was on demand, but they were doing their best to manage 30 sets of parents on top of 30 students. So the teacher would offer to manually schedule a Zoom call via email and then notify me as a parent to look out for a notification, maybe directly from Zoom if they scheduled it. We'd agree upon a mutual time to discuss a work schedule plan that would work for me and them, and set up the pieces for my child to get on a Zoom call. We'll confirm that invite, and then, of course, everything's confirmed and sent over via email for sure this time. And then I'll plug in the details into my child's iPad or maybe an extra computer that we have, and then wait for a time to actually start this. Then the Zoom call will begin. We'd rinse and repeat this process, sometimes several times during the day, several times during the week, or anytime there was a class meeting where we needed to be involved with getting the kids up and running. If you're counting, that was about 7 steps involved to get a Zoom call up and running for someone who's technologically savvy, but working with smaller children. I would bet anyone else who's on this call who has smaller kids maybe had a similar experience. I'm hoping people are nodding their heads at this point and agreeing with what I just said, that it wasn't easy. There's lots of steps involved for a simple video call. So that's where I wanted to bring things over to, the initial concept that kind of brought up this remote class initiative that we launched. We had a solution that was working internally for Jamf Pro that could really help facilitate communication between individuals. The virtual visits platform was created to solve a similar problem in healthcare. The patients needed a way to connect with doctors and loved ones while they're admitted into the hospital. Information about the virtual visits and how it works and the framework involved, it really helped shape the conversation with remote class by having someone available with the tap of a button. Now, Jamf Pro does have additional robust capabilities that we were unable to leverage immediately within Jamf School, so it was important to find unique solutions to make this feature shipped as quickly as possible within the next update. And I don't expect that we have a lot of healthcare folks joining us on this session, but if you want more information about how virtual visits works at Jamf, you can always visit our website or check out our YouTube channel just to kind of see what the framework of this looks like in more context. So with that framework in mind, I can say that Jamf was looking for a quick feature to ship. If we're all dealing with a similar issue like I described at Jamf with our own kids, then surely teachers and parents and students were all having a similar experience in their homes. As Jamf worked to gather needs from customers, it became increasingly apparent that we need a way to foster communication between teachers and students. This is definitely a must-have. That's why we immediately went to work on additional remote classroom features for the Jamf School Teacher and the Jamf School Student apps. If you've been following along with any of our webinars, or maybe trying out a demo of Jamf School, you may have already seen the features that we have available, like messaging. That's available in both of our apps right now. This solves an issue for a large portion of schools, especially schools that have, messages disabled through Apple School Manager, or they have FaceTime disabled through Apple School Manager. This fills a large gap as well for the one-to-one interactions and even group discussions that you can have within an app, within messages, all within our product. But the greater problem here is, how could I as a student raise my hand virtually and connect with my teacher in a matter of moments if I needed help? You couldn't. So think of this in both the classroom and while students are at home. Maybe you have a shy child who's working on an assignment in class, but maybe too afraid to speak up and say that they need help. Better yet, what about a child who is at home struggling to complete an assignment there too? This brings us to phase 1 of the raise hand functionality with Jamf School Teacher and Jamf School Student. Today, Teachers can add something like a Zoom room with a recurring meeting link to the Jamf School Teacher app. Maybe they want to enable the waiting room within Zoom or their app of choice, and make it easy for students to jump on a call on demand within their office hours. The good news, this feature is done based off of time limits. So that way it can be added and removed to avoid distraction during the day by the teacher. But before we dive into that, I wanted to highlight 3 specific features tailored towards remote learning. Some of you may be using some of these features already, but some of this might be new to you. The raise hand and remote class features did ship mid-year, so there's a chance you may not have enabled them in the middle of the school year. So here's a quick glance of what things are going to be looking like within each video. I'll have a teacher iPad on the left side and a student iPad on the right. And I went ahead and captured these in real time with very little editing because I wanted the opportunity to show what this could look like in a real life scenario if you choose to leverage these features at your school. So let's talk through the raise hand feature first. And kind of coupled in with that will be the messages feature as well. Just like it sounds, the raise hand feature allows students to virtually raise their hand. It pushes a notification to the teacher and facilitates your response, whether it's through email or messages. This might also be handy in the physical classroom, maybe where a less confident student might need to grab your attention without drawing attention to the whole class. It's also great for non-readers who may need additional help. And as I mentioned earlier, the goal is really to keep communication flowing between students and teachers without needing to rope in a parent or guardian into every single interaction that needs to take place. What I love about this feature is that students don't need to be in an active class or they don't need to be in a Jamf School lesson in order to virtually raise their hand. It's always there. But on the other hand, I'll just mention that if you're worried about students virtually raising their hand at crazy times of the day or night, just know that your IT team can actually set the guidelines for when these features will be available to students. So on our next slide, I'm going to show you how it works via video and try to walk you through this in real time. When students tap that raise hand tile on their dashboard, they see a list of their teachers that they can ask for help. And then the pop-up menu actually appears on the teacher device there on the left side. And in this case, Mr. Johnson is looking on finding a book to use for another class. And even though he's in another app, he can still respond to the student via messages and connect with that student. You can send a one-way message if you prefer, if the student asks for your help, or you can elect to enable two-way messaging like we're going to see here. You're going to see pop-ups display and dismiss during the process. But the students and teachers can correspond in real time. As long as there's an internet connection, the devices don't need to be within proximity of each other. So this is just a glance of what it would look like if you were to use this. This is available today inside of our Jamf School Student and Jamf School Teacher apps. So let's say I'm a student and I'm working on an assignment. Maybe I'm using an app like Google Classroom. We all know that's pretty common. Maybe I get stuck on an English assignment and I need a bit more clarity on what is expected. I could leave a comment in the app, but remember my teacher only has office hours from maybe 11 o'clock to 2 o'clock today. Without losing my work, I can close something like the Google Classroom app and navigate over to the Jamf School Student app. I can virtually raise my hand and ask my teacher for help in the midst of doing something else. The teacher gets to respond to me via message, and this works great. I'll explain what this would look like if I need help within a assignment. So if you might see where I'm going with this, teachers need a way to interact with students all throughout the day. They have a need to see the teacher. And while there's this giant stigma of students not wanting to call teachers if they need help, this might be one of those occasions where you want to ask for help if you do need help. So I can spring into action with something like the teacher app, and I can select the class that my student is involved in because that's all being synced over from my student information system. I can open up a Zoom session, and with my link that I've predefined within the remote classroom settings, I can actually spin up a remote class tile as it appears directly on the screen of my student's device. This launches Zoom for a predefined time, and we're basically good to go. That is one piece I'd like to notate as well. This process will work much better with video conferencing links that are not one-time sessions. So you'll want to leave your links active as long as you can. But what does this problem actually solve? So we really want instant access to a teacher. And we want to foster that communication between the teacher and student directly, all while mom or dad or a guardian may be able to focus on doing work at the same time in the same room or in a close room, or maybe even helping another child at the same time. So in this next video, I kind of want to show you what it would look like to give an overview of the remote class feature in action. So I'm going to launch the video, and we'll see that the teachers can start by going out to their video conferencing app of choice. In my example, I've chosen Zoom because it's what we use here at Jamf. And I just wanted to start a meeting by copying my invite link once this appears. So I'm going to select that link, and I'll bring it over to the Jamf School Teacher app. So as soon as I go to my settings and add that in, it's basically available for all of my classes. So from here, I'll tap done. And then if I go to my coding class, and I can get ready to launch a remote class just in the matter of moments, I can choose a meeting name if I'd like. And I can really define how long the tile would remain active for on my student devices. In my case, I'm going to select 1 minute, but it may be very helpful to leave this active for a longer duration. So maybe think of this in the sense of using office hours, and then you can just start this and it appears on your student's device. Once the student taps it, Zoom is actually launched directly on their device. So from here, they have all the regular functions that you would see in a video conferencing app. So if they want to share what they're working on with the screencast, they can do so while connecting with their teacher. And this really does set up capabilities to enhance the teacher and student connectivity in almost every environment. One last piece to mention with remote class, most school districts are going one of 3 ways right now, maybe a fully in-person or a hybrid all the way. We know that every school district is unique, but that there seems to be a resounding category that most schools are falling into. By this point, hopefully your administration, or maybe you've completed the teacher and student movement inside of your student information system. And you probably want to keep things that way generally for as long as you can until maybe school is back in session in person. So shown here, I've actually created a class with 6 students in it. And what I've done for my cohorts, I've actually decided to break this up into 2 different cohorts. I can divide my students in half and maybe only see my students that are online, and I can interact with them separately while retaining the student information system data that's been brought over. I can lock the students that are in my class into lessons while not disturbing the students that are actually at home. They won't get any of the restrictions. And we want to keep it that way in the event that a teacher has students that are in class and they might be at home. So that's one of the many features of remote class that we have available today. An important part of the education ecosystem is third-party apps. And there's many great platforms out there that can support learning in any capacity. Apple highlights some great partners, including Jamf and their Education Partner Program. Another great partner is Explain Everything. We have Bart, who is the founder of Explain Everything, to demonstrate how Jamf School Teacher and the Explain Everything app can be used together to create a phenomenal experience. Now that you've seen part of what we can do with our apps, let's go a bit farther with incorporating another solution in the mix. The power of Jamf School Teacher and Jamf School Student can help curate a different experience when combined with a partner app, just like Explain Everything. With distance learning and hybrid experiences still taking place all across the country, an app like Explain Everything provides a dynamic instructional environment. From a teacher launching a Zoom class in Jamf School Teacher, and actually sharing the process with a dynamic whiteboard and being able to embed live videos into your whiteboard canvas. Bart's the expert on this, so I did want to pass it over to him and let him explain what this is going to look like.
Great, thank you. So, Explain Everything is a digital version of your chalkboard, or should I say it's a supercharged digital equivalent that can be used together with Jamf's new remote classroom feature. Let me demonstrate to you how remote lesson can be started using Jamf and then performed with Explain Everything whiteboard. In this example, I have my iPad on the left and student's iPad on the right. I'll show you how easy it is to get everyone together for a lecture. All I need to do is to run a remote class so students receive the notification to join me. The remote class feature uses the teacher's Zoom or FaceTime account to mediate the connection. As a teacher, once I start my remote lesson, all I need to do is to run my Explain Everything and broadcast my screen like this. Students can join by simply tapping notification. Keep in mind that when using another app with Zoom or FaceTime, both conferencing solutions will stop transmitting your video feed. But that's okay, as I can have my own video frame with Explain Everything and make myself visible that way. Now I'm ready to guide my students through materials on color theory in a very visually interesting and appealing way. Alright, and in the second example, I will be showing you how to help a student who has messaged me that he needs a little extra help to understand the Pythagorean theorem. So here, as a student, I can raise my hand and ask for help. This will trigger notification on teacher's iPad. Teacher can send message. Now, if teacher wants to create one-on-one session with student, he can always do that, starting remote session for just selected student. And here, this will trigger notification on student's iPad, inviting students to the session. Now, as a teacher, I can prepare my session, go to Explain Everything, pick up some materials, share my screen, broadcast it through Zoom, and wait for student to join. Student, after using notification, will easily join the session. Now, as a teacher, it's relatively easy for me to explain Pythagorean theorem. I can always use additional materials that I have on my iPad to make visual illustration more interesting, like this. Great thing about Explain Everything is that it comes with features allowing us to whiteboard together in real time. Currently, I'm just broadcasting my whiteboard to a group, but if I wanted, I could open it up so everyone could work together actively in real time. Back to you, Molly.
And now I have even more good news. What about Jamf Pro? If you are using Jamf Pro, the Jamf Teacher app is now live. When integrated with Jamf Pro, the Jamf Teacher app, which is a free mobile device app that allows teachers to have limited management of students' school-issued devices. When using Jamf Teacher, teachers can manage classes by locking students into specific apps and websites. They can also create and start lessons by allowing students to only access apps and websites of that lesson. All customers can always sign up for a beta with the click of a button in your settings and navigate to beta. If you'd like to participate in the beta program for Jamf Pro, you can enroll in that program in the Jamf Nation site under My Assets within the Accounts section. After enrollment, you can reference the release notes for a complete list of what's included in that build. So what's next for Jamf School? As a public company, Jamf is not able to disclose specific roadmap features at this time. But rest assured, we have shifted significant focus towards helping schools across the world be successful with initiatives like remote class, and will expand upon these capabilities. While Jamf School has largely been focused on customers with less than 500 devices, we're adding more features that will benefit larger school districts as well. We talked a lot about these amazing features in this session. There's another session that I would love for you to be able to attend. Her name is Kelly Watkins Conrad, and she is running these twice daily, every single day of JNUC, and they're called Experiencing the Power of Jamf School Interactive Lab. They're running every day at 12 Central and 2 p.m. Central. Thank you so much, and we'll open it up for questions.